Hello, everyone. I'm Carrie Coates, and I'm the director of the Center for Advanced Entrepreneurship here at Rollins College at the Crummer Graduate School of Business. And welcome to the Rollins Venture Plan Competition. We're really excited about our lineup tonight, and we think you're going to really enjoy the evening. We have 4 finalist teams. They are Capitec, Fleet Zoo, Hino, and Thor Orr. And tonight they'll be competing for over $100,000 in cash and prizes. Our cash prizes tonight are $25,000 to the winner, $15,000 to the second place team, $7,500 to the third place team, and $2,500 to the fourth place team. In addition to the cash prizes, all of our finalists will also get a spot in the Venture Scale Up Spring Cohort, which will be starting in a couple of weeks. I don't know if Dennis Poppy is here tonight. I don't see him, but we're appreciative to Dennis for that opportunity. Additionally, our winner tonight will receive consultation and coaching from RVR Consulting Group, the Idea Fund with Richard Fox, the Florida In-House Counsel Law Group, and accounting support from Crummer Professor Dr. Kyle Meyer. Are you here, Kyle, somewhere? Okay, he's not here either. All right. And in addition to all that, the winning team tonight will also receive a minimum $25,000 equity investment from Venvelo, an investment group headquartered here in Winter Park. And I believe we have some of the Venvelo people here tonight. Would you like to stand up and say hello? No? All right. Let me just make sure. I got to make sure I say hello to everybody. Okay, you don't want to stand. All right, that's fine. All right, and we would not be able to do any of this tonight without all of our sponsors. And so I hope during any of the breaks or during the reception you were able to see the board outside. We have a lot of great sponsors. I do want to give a shout out to the Hayes Family Foundation, to Clay Bidinger with Kenyon and Bayfor Energy, for all of their generous support. Now, I'm wondering if we have any past winners here tonight. I don't see anyone. Okay, so we won't introduce them. We weren't sure who was going to be able to make it. All right. So in total, the 18 finalists of our competition in the last 5 years have collectively raised nearly $12 million in venture capital, generated more than $40 million in revenue collectively, and today employ almost 250 people. So we're really proud of the track record that our winners and finalists have been able to amass. The Rollins Venture Plan Competition is open to all early stage ventures in a 7-county area: Orange, Osceola, Seminole, Polk, Lake, Volusia, and Brevard counties. This year we had 69 ventures who entered the competition. We narrowed the field of 69 down to 14 semifinalists. We had a live pitch round for the 14 semifinalists, and through that round, we were able to narrow the field down to the 4 finalists you will see tonight. So they have been through quite a rigorous process. So here's what's going to happen tonight. Each of the 4 teams will have 10 minutes to pitch. We will then have up to a 15-minute Q&A period for the judges only. During halftime, if you will, when the judges go away to deliberate, we will have Night Runner, and Dr. Pete McAlinden. Is Pete here? Pete and Doug Storer. Doug and his wife Renata are here. Doug actually finished in second place in 2015 in this competition. He and Renata were just on Shark Tank. They got a deal and they walked away. And since then, his company has been skyrocketing. So you're going to hear all about Doug's story while the judges deliberate. Hopefully that will happen around 8 o'clock and take around about 30 minutes. You hear that, judges? That's right. So this time, let me introduce our judges and we'll get the competition started. Tonight we have Richard Fox with the Idea Fund, Jason Rottenberg with Arsenal Venture Partners, Chris Kogan with 7 Holdings, Thomas Bidinger with Bay4 Energy, John Riley with the Legacy Fund, Richard LaCursi with Venvelo, Richard Powell with APC Partners, Jonathan Taylor with Entrenext, and last but certainly not least, Diana Latour with LFE Capital.
Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, and we have Katie and Jeff Homan with Hino.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We're really excited to be here, and we're excited to share with you what Jeff and I have been doing over the last couple years. So our company is Hino. We're a medical practice management software solution. So basically what we do is we take all of the processes and procedures and different ways that you go and use your business, and we automate it into one single program. Okay, so that's Hino. My name is Katie Homan. I'm a physical therapist. I've been practicing for 11 years. 8 years ago, I opened my first clinic, and today we're a successful 2-clinic practice in Central Florida. So it didn't come easy. We had a lot of struggles. We made a lot of mistakes. We spent a lot of money on mistakes we made. And so one of the things I wanted to do was try to streamline our practice and make things more efficient, so employees weren't having to spend tons of time on tedious tasks that made the business run and gave us certain information. So this form up here, the daily productivity, is a form that my receptionist would fill out at the end of the day. So she would input all of the information that was used within the clinic, so what patients came in that day, what the insurance payers were, and after an hour, we would finally be able to see what it was that we actually made or lost for that day. So one of the first things we did with Hino is we automated it. So we made it so that it was pretty much instant. So my receptionist at the end of the day could then go in, enter the employees that worked that day, how many hours, and boom, it automatically emailed to Jeff and my phones by the end of the evening. And now, once we had 2 clinics, this was huge. So we were saving 2 hours a day just with this tiny little component of what Hino now does. So we were saving almost $700 a month just with this. So after realizing the potential of what we could do and how we could really streamline things in my practice, I thought, who better to do it with than my partner in crime, this sexy, brilliant man right here.
She don't usually say things like that to me. So I'm Jeff. So Katie and I started talking, okay, let's get Hino going. So a little bit about my background. I left the Air Force in '99 to go to work for Oracle. Probably about a year or so into that, my boss was like, I got a little challenge for you. We want to build this system for 30 users. I was like, okay. So we started to build that system, and as the years went by, we kept adding to it. And then Oracle started making these big acquisitions, PeopleSoft, Siebel, Sun, and we would evaluate, somebody at Oracle would evaluate their systems and be like, and we would end up consuming their systems and bringing that functionality into ours. So kind of like Hino, we started with a little system, and by the time I left Oracle, That system had grown to 50,000 internal users, and every single Oracle support customer interfaces with that system today. So that was a great feeling to be able to do something like that. So to be able to, the thought of doing this with my wife was overwhelming. So I was like, all right, 18 years at Oracle, I'll quit, we'll go try this. So here we are. So what do? I could spend hours on this slide and put everybody to sleep, but I'll just kind of hit the high points. We had paper charts, we automated that, we built an EMR. We had, the billing was paper, somebody would write down the super bill and then go enter into another system, we automated that whole system. We were on Salesforce, we automated that and built our own little Salesforce. And Hino, that was more targeted towards medical professionals. We were on 3 different fax systems, SimplyCast, eFax, all kinds of faxing, where we were doing our marketing, our inbound and our outbound. We turned that around and built all of that into Hino as well. We also do the whole 837p transactions and pretty much everything you need to run your practice from right in a single web browser, built on Oracle technology. So is there competition? There is a lot of competition. A lot of them started though kind of similar to us with like a small piece and then stayed that small piece and then bolted things on. We kind of knew from the outgo we were going to start with a solid core platform, build everything in our platform and scale from there. A lot of these companies, they are huge, they are big, but again, it's a multiple system configuration where one has your EMR and then it ties to a back-end piece that does your billing and the EDIs and all that stuff. Why physical therapy? Well, one, she's a physical therapist, and that was our business, so we knew that very well. And the market size was actually, as we were going through Starter Studio, we learned that the market size in physical therapy was actually really good, and the growth potential is huge, because a lot of people are seeking alternatives to injections and things like that. So physical therapy is slated to grow above average at 34%, occupational at 28%, and speech at 30%. Now, Hino is targeted towards these pieces for the EMR component, but we built it back in generically. So up here you can see psychiatrists. They're also slated to grow at 15%, but they're a much smaller market. But just for the heck of it, we ended up onboarding a psychiatry group on a Hino as well, and they're happy so far. And we've also onboarded a cryotherapy clinic too. Our business model, we are charging $150 a month per therapist. The rest of the users in the office are free. We also have a charge a one-time onboarding fee between $200 and $10,000 an hour. That'd be nice. $210,000 one-time setup fee. So far, we've only charged the $200, and what that is I take the data from whatever system you're coming from, I bring it in, we do the training, set up the account. We also plan to someday offer a white glove service where we're flying on site, training your staff, doing whatever you need us to do, make sure you're comfortable with your onboarding experience to Hino, washing cars, taking kids to school, happy hour, whatever we need to do. And we also have two add-ons, a marketing add-on and a sales add-on at $50 a month per customer. So far, all of our customers have opted for those options. Cash flow. So what I've done here is that first number, that's based on how many users are currently on the system. At the end of February, we ended at 23 users on the system. If you were to annualize that, that would actually give us a profit of $23,000. So we're actually in the black and we have no burn rate. And actually have $6,000 in the bank. Going forward, we are projecting a very modest 2017. I want to make sure the technology stack is tight and where it really needs to be. As we move into 2018, we're going to start scaling quite a little bit more. And then by the time 2022 rolls around, based on what our competition has done and similar issues to us, we're planning on going parabolic by then.
So as far as what traction we've had so far, so it was a blessing to us to be able to get into Starter Studio. That really helped us to be able to test the market and validate the product that we were using already in my clinics. By the end of Starter Studio, we had our beta testers started and running, and by January, that's when we started launching live customers. So 50% of our current customer base is actually from word of mouth referral from customers that we had before that. So that's been a huge traction for us. We also just hired a salesperson, and he's going to start on Monday, so we're very excited to really start pushing sales more and more. We also right now, so Jeff said the end of February, how many users we had? 23. Now we have about 27, and I actually have 27 more in the pipeline ready to go, itching to get on. So our market strategy. So from being a therapist for 11 years, I have a ton of different industry connections that I've kept in touch with over the years and stay very close with. That's how we got our first customer base and got them involved in Hino. We also want to be able to give this product away for free to colleges so that they can train their staff or their students in how to use a program like this. So when they come out into the workforce, they are able to already know how to use it and really run with it. Also, basing off of our current user referrals, the amount that we're just getting from word of mouth has been unreal. We didn't really expect that, but that's been really going well. And then our next big push is going to be sales. So I haven't done really much sales up until now. It's pretty much all been my current connections and friends of them and different people that they know. So what do we want to do with the money if we win? So we want to put the majority of it towards sales. That's what we want to do. We really need to start pushing sales and really driving this into owners' laps so that they're able to see what Hino can offer to their clinics. We also are really excited about getting into a second stage accelerator. We feel like the mentorship and everything that we've gained out of Starter Studio has really benefited us and helped us get to where we are today. So we think that a second stage would be even better. So to summarize everything tonight, so you can either choose a competitor and piecemeal different systems together that are fragmented and complete your system in your office to be able to run it, but it's confusing and you're on multiple platforms, or you can choose something like Hino. Now, the typical practice in the US is about 4 therapists. So not only is Hino saving a ton of money per month on that same size practice, but we're also saving countless dollars in efficiency and productivity of your employees. So that's my contact if anyone has any questions, and then thank you very much. Yes.
Sales cycle look like with a therapist that you don't already have a relationship with? How many visits does it take? Oh, thank you. What's the sales cycle look like? How many visits does it take? How long does it take? How many decision makers are in the process?
We have never visited anybody. All of our customers are from Maryland to Hawaii. A couple that she's onboarded that were word of mouth. Jennifer, they were from, she usually spends about two or three demos and then a couple follow-up phone calls and a few emails, and they usually come around.
To be quite honest, a lot of times it's not necessarily the owner of the clinic that comes on board. It's usually the office manager or someone that oversees all of the processes, and they present it to the owner. So I've actually had a few customers that the owner doesn't even see it until they're on it. So
yeah. You've got a sales, I'm sorry.
I know it's an Oracle-based system, but what hardware platform, or how does it, is it cloud-based, or what hardware equipment does it take to run it?
Yeah, it's cloud-based right now. It's hosted by Atlantic.net. Everything is inside an Oracle database. The UI is built with Oracle Applications Express, which is a rapid application development tool, so I can really build stuff fast. And even all the uploads, even the files, everything is contained in the database. And then, I don't know if you noticed on my financials, but my hosting cost is going to go down. I'm actually going to be moving it into Oracle's cloud, and they're aggressively pricing their solutions pretty good. So it'll all be contained with Oracle.
Great.
So real quick, you talked about sales in a vague way, so you don't have a lot of onboarding your customers and so forth, but how do you get to them? I get the impression, I understand your relationships and so forth, but to get to the kinds of numbers you started talking about, there's a distance between who you know and who you're going to have to know. To go out and touch every potential customer with a sales team, even if you did it by phone, is going to get time. It's going to be time consuming and so forth. So you got through some early sales. what's the real go-to-market strategy? I mean, it's got to be more to it than just we're going to hire a salesperson and hopefully they're going to do well.
So even just in Orlando, once a year, they have a private practice convention that has tens of thousands of private practice owners. So I think going to conventions is going to be a big thing as far as just getting our name out there so that they're able to see other solutions. Also, I mean, I guess doing some marketing on the internet and doing all of. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. She's being very modest. Like she'll just for the heck of it Facebook message a clinic and be like, hey, do you want to do a demo? And a lot of times they do. We stumbled into this because of the conferences we go to. We talk to the people, and the first thing they say is not what's a new PT technique. It's like, what software are you using? And this is way before So we had a feeling there was a real need out there. So just by her doing that limited targeting and getting a handful of customers, we'll just kind of multiply that out and plan on growing that way.
Your thought process, I mean, your presentation was well done, and your thought process, I get it, but to get to the numbers you want to get to, spend more time, particularly if you're going to go out and raise serious money, spend more time understanding a marketing strategy and trying to be different than whatever else is out there. Whatever it might have been your sort of your traditional way you saw at Oracle or whatever, those are great things, and Oracle can do well at that. Because they have the resources to do it. You're not going to have all those kinds of things. So think a little bit from that perspective of how you might want to go at it.
First of all, congrats on turning a profit that quickly. That's awesome. But just on the financials, just so that I understand what we're looking at, I just wanted to make sure, because it was February 17 and then Q2 and then Q4.
Yeah, I had a hard time.
Is that specific to that quarter, or is it cumulative through that period of time? Yeah, just help me understand. We're doing 42,000 in revenue in February. Can I look at that and say that that's a $500,000 run rate because it's 42 times 12 as of February? I just want to know what I'm looking at, because then Q4 is 186. Is that 186 for the 3 months in Q4, or is that 186 through Q4? Just help me to understand what I'm looking at.
So what I probably needed is another column up there. Each one of those is basically a target date. When we hit that date, that's how many users we want to have on the system. And if we had that many users on the system, those are the numbers annualized.
Okay.
So
Run rate.
yes, I had run rate up there. I didn't know if that was confusing. So
Right, it's a monthly. Is that the monthly number?
oh, no, that'd be nice. That's yearly.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because it was.
Yeah, so if we had 100 users on the system, it'd be a $91,000 a year profit for the whole year.
Okay, good. And just so that we, as judges here, know as well, are you raising money? And if so, what would what are you looking for?
We haven't started, go ahead. This is our first time really doing something like this other than Starter Studio. We definitely want to use this money towards taking the pressure off of paying our new employee that starts Monday, our hosting costs, and then just from there, we're going to need money to grow sales. And she's the physical therapist, I'm the software engineer, so that's the area we're going to have to invest in to get that expertise to kind of add that skill to our team. Yeah, and our new guy starts Monday.
That's good. So congrats on this. You know, we love software businesses that are built by actual practitioners. So someone who understands the problem set, and then someone who builds a software around a problem set known by, for lack of a better term, a non-technologist, somebody who's using it. So in SaaS businesses in general, and software businesses in general, there's this dichotomy between the price point of what you're selling and how you're able to sell it. So at your price point, you can't hire a bunch of salespeople. It's not possible. I'm just telling you, you do the math on the guy you hire, think about how much he has to sell to create that revenue that you need. Just to cover his salary won't work. You can't, so there are two choices you have. Increase your price point. I don't know this market, so I can't tell you whether that's right or not. Or really figure out a way to sell with the minimum amount of sales cost possible that normally excludes salespeople. Meaning, you go to conferences, it's self-serve off the web, it's through other channels, it's those types of things. But if the idea is to bring on a whole bunch of salespeople, what you guys will quickly figure out via math, doesn't work. can't possibly work. And when you scale to that number right there, if a salesperson is touching even a quick call or 2 calls or a demo, you can't hit that number with salespeople. Your expenses will be so much higher than what you have there. So to Richard's point, you've got to think about channels to market that are super, super cheap. Because your product, I'm sure it's a great product, the price point is really low, right? I mean, really, really low. And so either you've got to fix that price point, or you've got to figure out how to get to market with a less costly way.
Yeah, and the $150 per seat, I mean, you might run into a clinic that has 4, 5, 6 seats. I mean, we were paying about $1,000 a month based on that model for what we had at our clinics. So that's going to help, and then a lot of the software review sites. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the number we normally use internally when we look at deals is somewhere between $80,000 or $100,000 a year. So average price point to customer, $80,000 to $100,000 to have a sales force, to have a direct sales force. If you're selling people for $40,000 a year, can't have a direct sales force. The math won't work. So.
You mentioned there's a lot of competition in the market. Is there any single player that has a big market share, or is it very fragmented right now?
It's fragmented, but there's one in particular that has a huge amount of market share. They're not an all-in-one solution. They bolt on to other ones. They've recently acquired somebody where they're trying to come up with an all-in-one solution. And interesting enough, they're probably about a $40 million company, started the way Katie and I did back in 2008. So we're starting out the gate with the complete solution, and I think we have a competitive edge there.
Hi. Are both of you guys full-time, and the new salesperson that's joining, are they pure salary? Are they getting equity or options?
He's pure salary. He starts on Monday. I'm 100% full-time with this. And then Katie's probably about 50% this and then 50% running her clinics.
God for Oracle stock over the last 8 years.
It still helped the 401k.
All right, so our next presenter, we have Dylan Weitzman here with Thor Orr.
Hello, everyone. Oh, it's too loud, right? Oh, clicker. Perfect. Alrighty. Hello, everyone. I'm Dylan Weitzman, and this is Thor Orr. We are a byproduct mining company for rare earth and uranium. We basically mine the waste of other mines. Pop quiz for everyone. What does a Tesla, a wind turbine, a laptop, and a Tomahawk cruise missile have in common? Anyone? Let's look at the supply chain and find out. They use electric motors, electric generators, they use hard drives, and they use missile guidance systems. And they all have in common is a rare earth magnet. And like the gentleman said, they use something called rare earth elements, these 3 specifically. So these metals are so critical to our energy infrastructure, our electronic industry, and our military defense, it's obvious we have a secure supply for them, right? Couldn't be further from the truth. Now, China controls 97% of the world's market for these rare earth elements, and the US manufacturing is over 88% reliant for them. And it's not just 3 elements that China controls, it's 17. They're used in over 440 industries in the US alone. They create over 600,000 jobs and over $328 billion in revenue a year. Everything from the camera we have right here, to the cell phone that you're on, to the TV that you watch Netflix on, even the car you came here with, the fuel you put in your car, and the medicine that you use, all use rare earth elements in their manufacturing. So if a company wanted to come into this industry and help diversify the supply, this $3.5 billion rare earth oxide market, it would cost them about $1 billion in 10 years to start up a rare earth mine. Literally 1/3 of the market just to enter the market. And if this market by 2020 increases to $7 billion like it's predicted, it still costs 1/7 of the market just to enter the market. So we've learned that mining rare earth elements as a primary revenue stream is no longer cost effective. Companies such as Molycorp or Avalon Advanced Metals went bankrupt or changed their business model entirely. We don't have a good electronic recycling industry in the US either. Processing rare earth, well, we actually process other countries' rare earth elements, not even our own. And byproduct mining. This is what China does to control the world's supply of rare earth elements. They get their rare earth elements from the waste streams of the iron ore industry. And Thor Ore, it is our mission to get the rare earth elements from the waste streams of the phosphate industry. Every one of these black dots you see right here is an active phosphate mine around the world. There's over 400 phosphate mines and processing plants in over 53 different countries. But we get all of our rare earth elements right here in that red dot from China. But we can actually diversify the US supply right here in Central Florida, where Florida's phosphate industry, or better is known for, the fertilizer industry, produces about 20% of the world's fertilizer supply, 60% of the US fertilizer supply, and they also generate about 32 million tons of waste a year. That contains 500 tons of rare earth elements and over 600,000 pounds of uranium that we just stockpile in these giant mountains you see in the back, or we disperse in our fertilizer. So Thor has developed a nanofiltration system that we can actually integrate into a fertilizer company and start recovering these rare earth elements before they end up in the waste stream. So right here is where we can start integrating into the facility. And we've actually tested this out using product samples we got from Mosaic, which is one of the world's largest fertilizer companies. It took us about 8 months to get this phosphoric acid you see at top, and we're one of the only companies in 10 years to do so. We also have FIPER down here. They are the Florida Industrial Phosphate Research Institute. We got a lab from them, we got some small amount of funding, and we got a lot of equipment in order to test our material with. It took us over 6 months to do so, but we managed to make them a good strategic partner of ours. And through their combined effort, we were actually able to make a product that works. We can recover 52% of rare earth elements and uranium from the waste streams of Mosaic's filter, or Mosaic's phosphoric acid. So there's 3 types of technologies on the market right now that can potentially do this. We have solid phase extraction, which works just like your air filter at home, but it can selectively capture specific elements at an atomic level. We have ion exchange, which works by, well, exchanging one atom for another. We also have something called solvent extraction, which works just like how you have water and oil. As you shake it up, it separates again, but certain elements are captured in each of the phases that separate. So let's look at the cost considerations for each one of these. Let's look at the environmental considerations for each one of these. And let's look at which one of these actually work in, let's say, Mosaic's process. Looks like we found one that works, and that's the one that we're using. But we're not just winning alone here. We have made a lot of strategic partners along the way. For example, we are an affiliate of the Critical Materials Institute funded by the Department of Energy. Their goal is to diversify the rare earth supply here in the US and to make new technology that uses rare earth elements. We've also been working with Oak Ridge National Labs, the largest lab in the US. They're going to be doing third-party testing of our product to make sure that it works. We have FIPER, which I mentioned before. We're going through another grant with them. We have Salinas, which they're going to be signing a LOI for potential sales and distribution into other industries, such as the aluminum, iron, coal, and oil, because they too have rare earth elements in their waste streams. And Mosaic, the world's largest fertilizer company, is a strategic partner and potentially our first potential customer as well. They own over 8 mines here in Florida and Louisiana, and many more around the world. So meet the miners. We have Glenn Wagner, he's our CEO and R&D process engineer. He works with government contracts and customer discovery. We have Brandon Carpenter, he's our COO and nano manufacturer. He holds several patents. He's a Forbes 30 under 30 and a YC fellowship alumni. We have myself, Dylan Weitzman. I'm the CRO and separation technology specialist. I have worked on oil spill extraction technology before. Currently I've worked in the nanoscience lab for 2 years and I'm pursuing a degree in physics. We have Dr. Regis Stana. He's known as the godfather of uranium extraction for good reason. He pioneered extracting uranium from fertilizer. Dr. Melanie Beasy, she's an advisor of ours at UCF. She's an analytical chemist that has helped us understand the data we've been collecting. We also have Kevin Pope, George Grammatikis, Mark Blue, Terry Pierce, and Michael Judith. They've been helping us a lot with understanding the rare earth supply issue in each of their respective industries, business development, contracts, negotiations, and overall business growth and development. So right now we have the fertilizer industry and the rare earth industry. They run parallel to each other and there's no cross connection between them. These mining companies mine the ore and convert it into a fertilizer product that goes to their customers, and for every ton of fertilizer product they make 5 tons of waste that either gets stockpiled or ends up in massive mountains of phosphogypsum, it's called. And that right there creates a lot of liability and environmental damage. We have these US-based rare earth companies or manufacturers that use rare earth elements, and right now their entire supply chain is based on China's rare earth supply. This stifles the rare earth value chain. So what we're going to do is we're going to become the bridge between these industries. We're going to have a 5, 10, or 20-year contract with a US-based fertilizer company so we can start integrating into their system and extracting these rare earth elements and uranium from their waste stream. We can then start processing those rare earth elements through a third-party processor here in the US and starting to recover the valuable elements in each of their separate forms. We then have a 5, 10, or 20-year contract with a US-based company that needs rare earth elements to stabilize the supply, thus reducing China's reliance upon rare earth elements and also increasing the rare earth value chain. And the uranium that we have, we can start selling to the government or military applications. And for every ton of acid that we actually start filtering through, we can actually get 150 grams of rare earth elements from them. That right there is only worth $1.50. But through the processing, we can actually increase that value to $13 post-processing. So with the operational capacity of a plant, which is about 1.4 million tons a year of phosphoric acid they make, and the filter efficiency, which we have about 52%, we could potentially be getting about $8 million per plant per year. Now, as our filter efficiency increases, we can actually extract more rare earth elements, economics of scale comes into play, and our processing cost decreases. So we could potentially be getting $16 million per plant per year. Besides, Mosaic owns 8 of them. So right now we are working on finishing out the bench scale prototype that we have. This will allow us to understand more of the cost and engineering constraints that we're working with. We're also working on getting contracts and LOIs so we can start seeking investments for building the small scale pilot facility that we need. That right there would be about a $2.5 million to build a 1/100th scale of a product that we have. Then we can also start getting investments for either debt or equity financing for the commercial pilot plant that we want to build. That right there would cost us about $15 million, but the US government has something called a Metals Act. That right there is a no interest loan from the US government for a rare earth company. So once we have a commercial pilot plant and the contracts, we can start producing our nanofiltration systems that we can start integrating into facilities, and by 2022 we can have our first unit. So what have we done so far? We've had over 150 potential customer discovery. We have validated our market. We have built a strong advisory board, strategic partners. We have gotten a grant from the NSF through I-Corps. We have gotten samples from Mosaic, and we have a prototype that works. So next time you're driving by Lakeland and you see this giant mountain of radioactive fertilizer, ask yourself, is it a waste or is it a resource? Thank you.
So you went through I-Corps. In that context, how do you define your customer segment? Who pays you money for what you sell?
The rare earth company that would need these rare earth elements, or the U.S. manufacturer that needs rare earth elements will be paying us for the rare earth elements that we're providing them. We have a contract with a fertilizer company. We would pay, like for example, we're looking at about a $5 million cost for a nanofilter to integrate into their facility. They get a 10% royalty of the rare earths that we sell to as an incentive part. Considering that each plant we could potentially be getting about $8 million per plant, we'll be able to start recuperating those costs of each filter system in the first year or two.
All right, and again, in that context, what is the value proposition to your customer?
It reduces their waste and turns into a liability. No, it reduces their liability and turns into an asset because they're spending money just to stockpile this material. Now this material is actually making them money.
And what is the risk to them to working with you? What do you have to achieve before they'll be a customer?
We have to have a commercial pilot plant up and running for them to turn that LOI into a sale. We've talked with Mosaic, and that's what they want to see. They want to see a commercial pilot plant. Because this plant actually has to work for about 5, 10, or 20 years, because the average lifespan of a mine is about 30 years.
Thank you.
How many people from the team slide are full-time?
Us 3 are full-time. Dr. Regis helps us out a lot. Dr. Melanie Beasley, whenever we need help, she helps us out. And a lot of our other advisors, whenever we need assistance, they help us out.
Okay. And the processors aren't doing this themselves because of the technology and the patents that you have, is that correct?
We're finalizing our patents right now. We need a little bit more capital in order to do so.
Okay.
Two quick questions. On the slide that you had in there about where you're going to intersect yourself in the value chain, right? That kind of, yes, this slide. And just piggybacking on the question you just asked. So who is your customer?
Our customer are these individuals right here,
Right.
with their supply
so not
chain.
Mosaic,
They're the ones providing the waste for us.
Right. So they're your supplier.
Correct.
And so your contract, you're going to be generating revenue from Apple, giving you a contract to supply them X amount of rare earth metals for 10 years.
Correct, because right now it's...
Or GE or BP or whoever.
Correct. A lot of these companies right now are all reliant upon China's rare earth supply.
No, understood. I asked that because I just wanted to clarify. It didn't sound like that was the same answer, so it's perfect. So just to clarify that. Go to the next slide in that timeline. How does that get sped up? 2017 to 2022 in your industry, it literally feels like it would be at the Ice Age versus the Industrial Age, right? Why 5+ years to get production? How does that get sped up?
Through a lot of it's to do with capital and hiring the right individuals.
Right, so capital could speed it up. How much dollars, if you had tomorrow, could production be in 2019?
We're looking that would be probably $20 million to get to the production facility now. Because the first part, the benchtop prototype, would take us about $250,000. The small scale pilot plant would be about $2.5 million.
Right.
And this one would be about 10 to 15 million.
Right, so plus less than 20 million, and you could do this a lot faster.
Correct.
Your timeline here is dependent on when you think you can get capital.
Once we have some collateral, we can actually go after the Metals Act, which is the no interest loan from the government.
Yeah, understood. I just don't think you have 5 years to get the first prototype done. There are a lot of people with $20 million that could do this a lot faster. So, but again, you've answered.
That's why we want to actually start getting contracts and LOIs for rare earth elements, so we can actually go to an investor and say, look, we have a contract with Apple for a 10-year period of time if we can deliver 500 tons a year.
Right, absolutely, yeah.
So that's our next step right now.
Yep.
Who was sitting there and came up with the idea to take the waste from these kinds of mines and tricked other people into coming along and starting a company?
That was me. Driving by this one day, I asked myself, what is this? Florida doesn't have mountains, especially white ones. They have garbage dumps. So I was curious about what this was, and I started looking into it, and then we found out about FIPER and the Critical Materials Institute. We met Dr. Regis. He introduced us to Mosaic. He used to work at Mosaic for 15 years. We've met with the president and CRO of Mosaic, actually.
And how many people in the company today have equity?
Us three.
You three. And how did you split up the equity?
Right now it's a third each.
Okay. All right. And then was on the slide, there was a CEO?
Yes, Glenn.
Okay. All right. Oh, you don't look like your picture.
You got a haircut.
Yeah.
Right. All right. And so how did he trick you into doing this?
One of the main problems that the U.S. faces in the military aspect is the fact that we don't have our own internal supply for rare earth elements and uranium. One of the things that the U.S. Navy is looking for is 15-year supplies of uranium from Spatewar Atlantic. They actually they view Thor Ore as a high priority venture for potentially supplying future aircraft carriers down the line. We also use rare earth elements in a variety of satellites. Say, for example, you can use europium like we're getting in our second extraction process. That can be used to replace rwandium, which is a much harder rare earth element to come about.
But so how did you guys know each other?
We all worked, Brandon and I worked at the launch pad as well as the Nanoscience Technology Center. Glenn has the record appointments for the most times to launch pad, I think like 150 in a year.
No, it was like 150 in a year, and then it grew to about 267 total appointments. It was just going day in and day out.
We all came from the Blackstone launch pad at UCLA.
You came from what, sorry?
Blackstone launch pad at UCLA.
Okay. And then last question, tell me a little bit about what you guys did before.
Let's see, I worked on oil spill extraction technology before. Some of my old co-founders here, we started ventures before. I've been a coach at the Blackstone Launchpad for 3 years. Coached over 450 startups so far.
And then you guys?
I did some research work in the Department of Defense for Office of Responsive Space. I also did ground-to-space weaponry, and Brandon can answer for himself.
So over the last several years, basically all I've done is nanofabrication, whether it be with ceramics, polymers, doing synthesis, characterization, and using them for a bunch of different applications, which is how I got wrapped up into this, because I'm really good at building stuff at a nanoscale.
Thank you.
So you guys, let's assume you're not the only smart guys on earth, okay? And
Although give me these first two rows, it might be.
yeah, that's right. Other than us, right? So I get the issue with China, but fundamentally, I suspect most of that market doesn't care where it comes from. Maybe the military has some particular interest, but if it's as big a deal as you make it, and this country being as creative, probably the most creative country in the world, why has anybody done something like this before?
There's other companies in other industries doing this. For example, a bunch of companies in West Virginia are trying to extract rare earth elements from the coal mines. A lot of companies are trying to go after the iron ore industry. We're going after the phosphate industry.
Right, no, I get it. You're going after it, and these other guys are going after it too. But if it was if the market is as big as you say it is, and it's possibly as lucrative as you say it is, and it's the amount of upfront investment to get to a point where, can I do this or not? That's probably the scariest piece of what you're presenting today. And I know you have prototypes that think you can get there, but there's a lot of money invested, and you're looking at 50 or 75 million bucks, and it's probably 275 million, and we'll still find out how much more it is. Those kinds of things just happen in all of these kinds of projects. The concern I have is why, if it's that big a deal, why nobody else is really doing what you're doing and satisfying the Apples and the IBMs and that world. And then what keeps Mosaic, since you don't really have any intellectual property today, what keeps Mosaic from watching you guys do this and then saying, all right, it's ours? I mean, so they can buy something from you, I guess. But the whole thing it's a story that's got, from a venture world, it's got a lot of holes in it. And it needs an awful lot of money to get where you want to be, and it's just hard to get there. So I guess what I'm looking for is, can you give me something that says this market is real, we are there? I mean, you say you can be there, but there's no real proof of it. And why is it just nobody else is trying to do this?
There are other companies trying to do it in different industries. We're one of the few companies that are doing it in this industry, in this specific part of Mosaic system. There's a few companies that are going downstream of Mosaic, but the conditions are not as harsh, and there's not a lot of rare earth elements in there. A lot of companies go after small quantities of rare earth elements that are a little more viable. We're going after something that's going to be longer term supply, a little more risk, of course. But a lot of the things that we're doing is we're building strategic partners. We're getting people that can really help us out, such as Oak Ridge National Labs. One of their main focuses for research is rare earth and uranium extraction from phosphoric acid. We're working with that team.
So let me ask you a quick question. So the customers that are down below, can you characterize their buying patterns for rare earth elements? Meaning, and I'll give you an example. Those of us in the industry know exactly how Apple buys PMICs, right? Power management integrated circuits. We know exactly how they buy them, who they buy them from, how they qualify them, how they put them into their devices, how they use them, how they transition from generation. Are they or other folks in there actually buying the rare earth materials and processing them or putting them, or is it through an ODM channel, or is it a component to one of their components?
That's why we want to go.
Can you get the mic back?
No, right there.
Oh, we have one. Yeah, what we want to do is we want to start with companies such as Apple, Tesla, SpaceX, DuPont, and track back through their supply chain by talking to their chief supply officer to find out where specifically in their supply chain is this issue occurring.
Right, because I can tell you where it is in Apple. Mm-hmm. It's not close to Apple. So Apple doesn't spend time worrying about rare earth elements or where they're coming from. They're focused on components and component performance, and so there's someone way earlier in the chain that has these rare earth elements integrated into their fundamental components. Mm-hmm. So the notion that that Apple is going to somehow use this as a, for lack of a better term, a hedge to the price or access to rare earth, it's so far down in their buying chain, right? And I can't tell you that for companies like Tesla, who are probably winding their own motors, or GE, who are using it in parts of their turbines and those types of things. But for the consumer electronics guys, you know, there's not someone who has a little line for rare earth elements on the build, for procurement or build on those things. So what I'm trying to figure out is who is actually accessing that commodity product and then putting it into an underlying piece of electronics. Yeah.
Oh, one of the things we're doing through the National I-Corps program that we're entering into is to find out these specific customers through a lot of the customer discovery. Starting with, for example, Apple will talk to their supply chain officer that will lead us down the line for them. That's what we want to be start doing right now, because if we can get that contract or an LOI from that specific individual, we can now take that to an investor and hopefully start getting funding to build out our prototypes or commercial pilot plant. So we know that we have some work going back to the supply chain.
As far as funding, you had a $2.5 million cost for the small scale plant. $250,000 was for what?
That's the lab scale. That's for a small little tabletop version that we can fit in on a lab table that works on a continuous 24-hour process.
So what's the next thing that you're looking to fund? Is it that?
If we could get funding for that, right now we're applying through grants in order to fund that aspect. A lot of the larger capital requirements are the small scale prototype, which would be 1/100th of a scale of the commercial pilot plant. That right there would tell us a lot of the engineering design costs that we need to consider.
And that's after the lab scale?
Correct.
How much is that?
That would be $2.5 million.
Oh, that's the 2.5. Okay.
And why does that have to be built versus some fancy software that could tell you?
A lot of it is.
The question was simulation. Can you simulate?
We were thinking about using simulation software like COMSOL Multiphysics, but that would just take too much time and effort to find the expertise that have chemical manufacturing knowledge in that specific area. Right now, we know individuals at Oak Ridge that could help us with building this out through a sub-awarding, through a grant.
A lot of this we can do through modeling and simulation. However, a lot of the research we've already done, even at its current efficiency of 52%, we could actually take it to market as is and still be economically viable. So most of the testing we're doing now is just proving that it has the durability to last in these conditions over a period of time. And while we could simulate it, at this point we're far enough along to where, in all honesty, it'd actually be a better use of our time and resources to do it experimentally. It'd actually end up being faster for us to do it like that rather than to simulate it and then do it. But we could do the simulations if we wanted.
Yeah, we actually went from 30% efficiency during the first few rounds of the prototype up to almost 60 like we see right here, with a very high affinity for europium, which in your slide decks I have for you, you can actually see that that right there is the most critical element the government needs yesterday, is europium.
We are on to our third presentation now. Here we have Sam Fayez and Dr. Mansoure Molagasemi. So please join me in welcoming Mansoure and Sam.
Thank you. All right. Good evening. I'm Mansoure Molagasemi, and this is Sam Fayez. We're the co-founders of Fleet Zoo. Thank you for this great opportunity. Let me start by telling you what Fleet Zoo does and what important problem it solves. Fleet Zoo is a planning and optimization platform for field operations. So think of a fleet operator that has a number of vehicles, and on a daily basis, they have to deliver a goods or a service. And their number one problem every morning is, how do I smartly assign these jobs to the drivers so I can reduce my miles, save on gas, realize the most productivity, and improve my bottom line? Let me tell you, this is a very, very complex problem. To give you how complex it is, if they just have 10 jobs, they have 3.6 million alternatives to work through in their head. And when those number of jobs goes to 11, that jumps up to 39.6 million alternatives. You get the picture how complex this problem is. And this is a problem faced by many, many companies. In fact, in the US alone, there are 1.5 million fleet operators. 97% of them operate 20 vehicles or less, totaling 20 million vehicles. So you may be thinking, well, obviously they're operating. How are they doing it? Not too well. They do manual operations, paper and pencil. If they're a little bit more sophisticated, they may use Excel or they may open Google Maps. How long is it going to take me to get from point A to point B? They use basic technology to communicate with their workforce. They pick up the phone and call them, or they text them for their next job. And they're very slow reacting to how the day unfolds, to events that happen. Somebody calls in sick, or there's a congestion or accident that somebody cannot get to their jobs. So as a result, they have poor productivity. They don't get as many jobs as their workforce capacity allows them. They zigzag around town, wasting gas, contributing to carbon footprint. Their customer service is not very good. We've all experienced this 4-hour wait time, and the reason they do that is because they have to give you wide windows so they can meet it, and they have little to no visibility into their fleet of vehicles. So just about now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, there are lots of these tools available on the market. Why don't they go buy one? Well, here's the problem. That's not completely true. First of all, these type of tools are the privilege of the big guys. UPS just spent nearly $1 billion on a planning and optimization platform, much like FleetZoo, for their fleet, and that's their competitive advantage. They're not going to share that with anybody, and that's the case with Amazon and the rest of the big guys that you see. Secondly, in terms of optimization, if you look, a lot of people claim optimization because that's a really cool word. But a lot of the telematic companies, as well as these guys who do turn by turn, they claim they have an optimization engine. Believe me, they do not. Also, there's some available in the market that are just good for one vertical and they don't transfer, for example, from pest control to plumbing or HVAC. And the few that are available, they're very, very expensive for these small operators to acquire. So clearly there is a gap in this market. And this is what we set out to fundamentally transform the operation of these smaller guys that cannot afford all of these things. What they need is a true optimization algorithm at an affordable price that's general purpose, generic. Anybody with a fleet of vehicles can use them. Easy to use and standalone. In other words, you don't want to have to force them to buy something and, oh, by the way, the optimization is an add-on. So this is precisely why we developed FleetZoo, to fill that niche. And we launched it in fourth quarter of 2016. And FleetZoo is a cloud-based SaaS product, and at the core of it is a sophisticated and proprietary optimization algorithm that we developed, and of course we masked it with a really easy-to-use graphical user interface. And all the user of the tool has to do is enter their orders, enter their drivers, or upload a file, and literally at a push of a button, within a few minutes, get an optimized itinerary for the entire fleet of vehicles, push it to their mobile platform, which tablet or smartphone in their cars, and at the same time have visibility as to how are they doing, where are they with job they've completed, and so forth. And at the same time, the customer gets a notification through a text or email that tells them what the estimated time of arrival of their service provider or driver is. We didn't just wake up one day and said, we're going to develop a route optimization tool. What happened was, which brings me to the team, what happened was we saw this problem firsthand because we did numerous projects for these very companies that I'm talking to you about. Well, so our team has been involved in actually improving the productivity of fleet operators over the years, saw their pain firsthand, and that's why we decided we're going to go down this road, because we saw a niche. Also, as I mentioned, this is a complex scientific problem, and it needed skill in this area of optimization. All four of us, our backgrounds are operations research, industrial engineering, with expertise in optimization. So we had the experience, we had the educational background. Also, we've worked together for many, many years, and in fact, our relationship didn't start through business. It was a faculty-student relationship that just morphed into a business relationship. So.
Thank you. So one of the very first things that we wanted to validate is, what is the value of this product to the customer? What are they getting out of this? So we did a lot of field tests, and let me share with you the results of the field test. FleetZoo will cut operational costs through miles and fuel consumption reduction, at the same time improving the productivity. So what does that mean for the bottom line of fleet operators? So let's go through a very simple example. A fleet operator that had 20 vehicles, and let's say that each vehicle drives about 120 miles per day, so they can expect a net savings of about $95,000 per year. And this is just from cutting the operational cost. So not to mention the improvement that come from increasing the productivity, improving the customer service level, and of course, the full visibility in the business and the analytics that can take that action and take it to the next level. So our business model is really focusing on the smaller guys and the bigger than them. So a subscription suite for the smaller guys for $39 per month per driver, and this will be charged by credit card, automatically taken care from our SaaS layer every billing cycle. And we have also the enterprise suite, which will be focusing on the larger guys, usually include API integration and automation, and usually a typical engagement starts at $300,000. This market is huge. So there are over 300 million commercial vehicles worldwide. And of course, the value that comes with that is huge. In the United States alone, which being our most accessible market, there are 20 million vehicles that can potentially generate close to $10 billion annually. But of course, 20 million vehicles, 1.5 million companies across multiple verticals is a lot to chew at the same time. So initially, we will be focusing on 40,000 companies in HVAC, pest control, and last mile delivery. And we really selected these verticals because their leaders and the industry outlook reports listed planning and optimization application as mission critical to the business. But there is also another vertical, cities and municipalities, which is not as obvious as the other ones, but they have the same challenges and problems that commercial fleet operators face. And we will be taking this in our initial wave. As a matter of fact, our very first customer is the city of Orlando. So they signed up for an enterprise suite, 70 field inspectors in their permitting and code enforcement department. So hopefully soon, we started the project already. When you apply for a permit in the city of Orlando, you will receive a notification that is powered by FleetZoo. So how are we going to market this? We are going to utilize a mix of inbound and outbound marketing. For the commercial fleet, especially the smaller one, we will be utilizing marketing automation. And this marketing automation will capture, nurture leads, funnel them, the qualified ones, to the sales team. This will make the sales team very productive to bring customers on board fast and at a very low cost. But also we'll be using direct sales for the larger fleets and utilizing partnerships that is based on mutual benefits and also our industry relationships. This is our competition landscape. When we benchmarked our product against competition, we really mark high in terms of value. But there is also something very interesting in this market, which is a lot of our competitors have been acquired by larger corporations and also repositioned from the market, which actually gives us a clue of exit strategy. This is our projection. We expect to be profitable by the second year. And we will use the funds really directing it towards building the customer base and, further taking the sales and marketing effort to another level. So in conclusion, FleetZoo is a market-ready product that is targeting a market that is large and growing. And we are solving their number one problem with a solution that is really very simple to use and affordable. At the same time, it's supported by a knowledgeable and passionate team. Thank you very much.
Nice job, Sam. Question for you, is Orlando your first customer?
Yes.
Is that an enterprise solution where it's $300,000? Is that, okay. And so what, primarily most of that is consulting?
No, the first part of it, there's an integration portion.
Right.
With the order management system that they have, and then they will be using FleetZoo just as it is. It's not consulting, they're using the product.
Okay, so then for that, what's the length of the contract?
Well, we signed the first year of
Okay.
the contract, and it's continuing.
All right, and so then I would assume you're going to try to use that as your leapfrog into the rest of the market, using that as a reference point or whatever.
Yes, but not just cities and municipalities. So we're taking a parallel path. We have a marketing company that's helping us reach, like Sandspur, using marketing automation to reach the 40,000 plus our initial market. And then at the same time, we're using, honestly, the way Orlando came about was through connections. We have an established reputation here, and we know a lot of people. So when they saw it, it was a no-brainer, and the timing was right. So we will continue to use partnerships and our connections to get customers, but our main focus is this marketing automation reaching the masses.
Okay, and so the $39 sort of, you weren't in a room, I guess. We had a discussion on a software product a little bit earlier. Are you convinced that at $39 a driver a month, you can make enough money, you can support and make enough money to do this? I mean, because that's assuming there's a pretty large volume of users that are going to be, that you're going to need to support and maintain. It's not necessarily I'm sure it's got its issues in terms of a software product for people to be able to use it comfortably and so forth. So there's a support issue there, but you think you can support it at that price? I mean, you're satisfied with that?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
That's fine.
That's why we're using the two-parallel path. We're not leaving the big guys.
Yeah, right.
It's also
Good.
Good revenue generation. But the small guys, we think that, and there are a lot of examples that, we have actually practiced tools that we used, that after a while, this thing will start to take over, and then our knowledge base will really minimize our support costs.
Okay, thank you.
Just tell us a little bit more about your background. You said you're a serial entrepreneur. Have you worked at a company that's raised outside capital before?
Never raised outside capital. I'm the investor. So I've been a professor at UCF for 26 years. I started my first company in 2001. We have a real good reputation, very high-end customers like NASA, Department of Transportation, Universal, Disney, you name it. We've got big customers.
What type of company is that?
It is really specialized tools in these areas. It's not it's a one-off kind of thing. And that's what we use the knowledge of to be able to build a product.
And yourself?
My background is industrial engineering. I've been working with her 13 years. She was my professor, and then we decided to take the path together.
Okay.
Your slides say indirectly a couple of ways that you're selling on low price. One slide says most affordable. Another slide said good return to the customer. Is your software better than what other people have? Why are you selling on low price?
That's a good question. I think it's sort of. In fact, you see, I think on the website we say an introductory price of $39. I think it's still on there. We say 59 and we cross it out. So that's something we can probably use help with, but ours is one of the very few at this price point that is an all-in-one. So you may be right, our price may be too low, but we don't know yet.
Okay, I would be very careful about selling on low price if you don't have a business model that allows you to be the cheapest operator. Now, another slide says that you're going to have, well, I did some math here. It amounts to 10,000 operational customers at the end of the 5th year. That's what your math numbers work out to. You have to sell 2,000 a year from now to the 5th year to get there.
Yeah, and we're talking to one customer right now who has 1,400.
Well, that's 10 a day. You have to close 10 new customers a day. That's a huge sales effort. The opportunity may be to charge more and expect to have fewer customers. It may be a more manageable business opportunity.
Very good point. We'll let you know in about 3 months when this.
Just to clarify, though, that was drivers, though, right? Not so much cost 10,000.
No, the drivers.
Right,
so each driver pays.
Divide the revenue by the.
No, I understand, but drivers, different.
Those customers.
No, so a customer that has, let's say, 100 drivers, they pay $3,900 per month.
But that's one customer with 100 drivers. It's per driver.
driver.
It's 10,000
Per driver
drivers.
per month.
Right. Right.
So the assumption that we had, one of the assumptions that we had in sheets, that these companies that we are going to approach, each one has 10 drivers.
Yes. I used 20 when I did my quick math.
Yeah.
20 drivers, 40 bucks, 39 bucks a month.
$800.
That's 8,000 a year. I took the revenue on the slide, divided by
About 10 grand a year, yeah.
Right, it's 10,000.
Yeah.
So we are assuming closing 144 or having 144 accounts for the first year, which is 14,000.
Of 10 drivers.
Second year, we go to 9,600, and then we go up. And then it's a subscription, so the revenue will be accumulating.
So how do you plan to get the attention of those customers and sell the product to them?
That's a very good question. And, you know, since we started, we ask this question every day. So that's why we are, we have been working with a lot of transportation companies, you know, all the way from drivers, dispatchers, and the owners. And we think that the marketing automation will give us a good starting point. So if we use this as a front end, we get the 40,000 companies connections, and then we start doing marketing automation campaigns. We are building right now actually a workflow of how these funnels will end up. Then we'll start getting the attention through automated webinars and things that really can get all these numbers to start looking at it. Then we'll be funneling, you know, the good ones and the qualified ones. Then our sales team will take the, you know, the good ones and then close the deal. Hopefully, after a certain period of time, when the things will fuel itself and we have the, you know, the good knowledge base and self-sustained, then companies can just go without any salesperson and just sign up for the service. There is also a 14 days trial period. You know, they can use it if they like it or not. And this is these 14 days we are really focusing on. So anyone will sign in, even if it comes through sale. We have to get him on board, make him sure that he's comfortable with the tool and use it. But the thing is that we think it's very simple to use, so they will stay on board.
Yeah, just a quick. How many founders of the company? And how did you split up equity?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
We're in that stage.
Okay. And so you have a software product that's done.
Done.
Who built that software?
We did in-house.
So amongst the 4 founders?
And software developers.
And so you paid the software developers?
Yes.
Okay. And but software developers aren't founders, they're not part of the equity. And you've been funding it?
Yes.
To date? And about?
A couple $1 million so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just
Thank
a
you.
really quick, one piece of advice, that the slide you have in your projections, it would have been helpful to have a little more detail on the costs, right? Are you guys, when are you projecting a salary? My real question was very simple, which I can't see from this one slide, is how many drivers do you need to be cash flow positive based on whatever the expenses are that you pursue?
1,700.
And does that include
That's a break-even
salaries?
point.
Or is that subsidized because nobody's taking salaries?
That's cost, and we're not taking any salaries yet.
Because our salary comes from our other company.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a business, right? So at some point in time, somebody has to. But
So that comes in the third year.
right, but 1,700 drivers covers all of the other costs.
Yes.
Okay.
4 or 5 salespeople, and we have the details, so we will be
Yeah.
very happy to share it with you. Support and.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the onboarding process? So when you think about someone adopting this, let's use the 20 drivers, right? Because when I did my math on 20 drivers, they're saving $95,000 a year, and they're paying you $9,600 a year. Seems like a pretty good deal, not including the productivity. Can you describe to me the onboarding process for someone that looks like that?
Okay, that's very good. Of course, at the beginning when we start onboarding, we'll give a lot of attention because the knowledge is coming from us. We didn't build this knowledge really automated. But basically when they get in, we have a getting started section. This getting started section will guide the user of the system to be able to use all the different components, which is in its simplest form, adding drivers and adding their orders and running the optimization. Is that what you're looking for?
And give me a feel for, I'm gonna do this. I've got 20 vehicles. I probably have 2 people in the back of the shop working this for me. How long is it gonna take me to figure out how to do this? And with what sophistication is this getting done? So are we tracking GPS on the trucks? Are we tracking speed on the trucks? Are we doing any of that type of stuff? Or we have 120 orders. We want to put out as few trucks as we can to get the 120 orders out today. You know, Tim drives slow. Richard drives like a crazy man. You know, I mean, how much granularity is in here?
Okay, so let me just go to the tool. So this is our actual product. Okay, so if I have two in the back house, these are like my dispatchers or load planners. So we will train these guys, and the training will take maximum 2 hours. Okay, sit down, enter your orders. This is how you define, your drivers, and then they will be using the tool in no time. Add their orders. If they are using Excel, they can upload their orders to the Excel, select the order, select the driver, run the optimization. If their drivers have iPhone or Android, they can download the app from the marketplace, and automatically they will receive the plans on their mobile application. So this is to create the plan and send it, means like dispatch the drivers. Then the 2 guys in the back office, there are no phone calls, they are not going to use this. At the end of the day, they will be monitoring this dashboard. So this dashboard shows each driver, and each driver has the list of orders that he or she is going to execute. So whenever they start going to these orders and they say, okay, I arrived to this location, or I started this order, I completed this order, they will be able to monitor what's happening in the back end.
And it's automated off the mobile device, or you have to press the button?
That's a very good question. So I'm not going into the technicalities right now. They have to start, so they receive the plan automatically on the device. They don't need to press anything, right? But when they arrive to the location, they say, start my order. When they complete it, they say, complete my order. Right? That's for now, but future, we have a lot of ideas. Maybe not go through the details.
I'm intrigued with the product, and we spend a lot of time looking at asset-based carriers, transportation, logistics firms. I've spent more time on this stuff than I realized. But for companies with a bigger fleet, so I'd be curious to understand not just the competitive slide with who got bought out and what, because that's your exit strategy, but how does your product stack up against the competition, and what a typical owner of a larger fleet, right? Like, say you wanted to win a client who has 1,000 trucks, right? They're shipping for Coca-Cola and Pepsi and whatever, and they're managing these fleets. Why would they choose yours versus Fleetmatics or what they're using right now? And I just don't know that yet, but I'd be curious to understand your thoughts.
So that's perfect. So, let's focus on the engine, our intellectual property. It's the optimization algorithm. So the optimization algorithm that really requires all our experience and all these years of experience and education in order to build something that is really efficient, right? So when we benchmark just the engine, so put same set of orders, same set of drivers in multiple optimization engines, ours got better, much better, okay? But not, let's say, much better, but like a company can quantify it. So for the smaller guys, they are using manual operation. They will receive, the benefits like that, like immediately. And we have tracking. So if you compare us to Fleetmatics, we have tracking. All what they need in tracking is just, okay, I have the breadcrumbs, where they were and so on. So when we start going to a larger fleet, they may not need all this interface. They just need the engine, and we have APIs. So we can get their orders and their drivers, run the optimization, and then send them back the solution. So we don't have really a price yet of how much, but let me tell you, under the hood, we are on the cloud, AWS, and we have a very smart architecture on how to really handle, we have like a spawning infrastructure so that our cost is really mostly variable cost, not fixed cost. So I can keep the same service level, and my operation cost of the engine is really low. So we can stack up. Actually, you mentioned Coca-Cola, so I don't want to get, but we compared solutions from existing central dispatch Coca-Cola algorithm to our solution, and we got better results. Their drivers zigzag around town. When we run it, we get better solution. And faster. So, I mean, it's all about combinations. So it's how fast can you run through the different combinations in order to come up with a solution fast. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you. All right, everyone. Last but certainly not least, we have Joe Sleppy here with Capacitech.
And thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't give Gabby fair warning, but my partner, Dr. Thomas, is also here today. We ready? Okay. Well, hello everyone. I'm excited to be here, and I'm very excited to present my venture, Capacitech. So over the last 6 months, Jane and I have sat down with many companies manufacturing power electronics in the IT industry. We're talking to them and they're telling us, listen, this is a mature industry. There's not a lot of innovation going on right now, and it's really hard to gain market share. So naturally I asked them, well, how would you gain market share? They said, well, our customers want our products to be smaller and more affordable. So after talking to their engineers, we found out that capacitors are a major roadblock to reducing the size and cost of power electronic products. Capacitors are essentially a special type of battery. They store just a little bit of energy that can be delivered very quickly. Capacitors come in many different shapes, many different sizes, and they're in almost every electronic device from your phone to whoever's got a Tesla outside. Well, being a manufacturer, holding inventory for all of these capacitors is actually really expensive. On a worldwide scale, it's about $800 million. We are going to save the world from high inventory costs by proposing a customizable capacitor. This is a capacitor that can be built on the surface of a copper wire and can be cut at different lengths to control the performance of said wire. Our capacitor, compared with another standard capacitor, is smaller. It is also going to be more affordable because you can buy large quantities of this capacitor rather than several different capacitors in smaller quantities, driving down the cost. So as I said, it's about 1/3 the size of an equivalent capacitor. It's lower in cost and it has less inventory cost because you only have one device in your inventory management rather than perhaps 20. So what we do is we take a bare copper wire and a bare copper foil. We go through our magic process and we wrap the two together to create our device. Now this process can be done on very long lengths and is very scalable. So what we're going to be doing is selling spools of wire. Okay? This spool of wire would then be sold to the customer. The customer would feed the spool of wire through a machine that will then bend and cut the capacitor based on the performance that is needed. The operator, or the employee, would be who puts the settings on the machine. This is not unheard of. They already have machines doing stuff like this for resistors and capacitors in machines today. So if we look at a real-world example, we have a capacitor on your left, which is just a simple voltage regulation circuit, and we have our version, which replaces those 8 cylinders. As you notice, there's a lot more blue space on our version versus theirs. That's increasing the real estate on the circuit board, which is very valuable because the customer could then add additional functionality to their product if they wanted to. But also, we have a lower cost. We would be able to reduce the size to be about 1/3 what they were currently doing. The inventory cost is less, and essentially, we would save $8 per unit, or $8,000 a day. That's very valuable. So this was developed by this handsome gentleman to my right. He was the inventor of the technology at UCF. Woo, that's right. Got amazing academic support, and what we realized was, okay, let's see if there's a market potential for it. So we went through the National I-Core program and validated that this is a real problem and this is a viable solution to that problem. I'm also excited to stand here for the first time publicly and say that as of 2 weeks ago, in exchange for 4% equity and a 2% royalty, Capacitech is the exclusive licensor of the intellectual property. So step 1, we're going to replace capacitors on power electronic circuit boards. This is because it is the fastest path to revenue for us. It is a simple and clear value proposition. But we want to do more than that. We're going to partner with companies that we sell our capacitor to co-develop new products. For example, we could replace capacitor banks on cell towers with a wire. By doing that, you reduce the rent that cell service providers pay to have access to their cell tower. We can also replace power cables that are in backup power systems. By doing that, you add another level of redundancy to backup power systems for an IT center or to a data center. But we would still be maybe a medium-sized company if we did these two things. I want to be a big company. So in stage 3, we are going to embed our capacitor inside a circuit board. By doing this, the customer no longer needs to buy, install, or manage capacitors. It's already in the circuit board. This allows us to scale to new verticals, and it would be a major disruption to the industry, which will likely result in us being acquired. So at first, we're going to focus on American power electronic manufacturers, a $200 million industry. Then we'll grow to global manufacturers and co-developing products before finally going into replacing capacitors to get to a $4 billion market size. Now, there are other ways to reduce the size and cost of power electronics. You could use a fancy, very expensive advanced capacitor, but oftentimes it's so expensive, it's not worth it for the customer to use them. You could also use machines such as the surface mount machine, but this is the standard way to do business now, so it kind of lost its transient advantage. Also, our capacitor provides more design flexibility, more manufacturing flexibility, and can help you launch new products. Power electronics manufacturing companies really value a diverse product line and a diverse intellectual property portfolio. To be successful, we need a launching customer, which we found in Ditech. This is a medium-sized company in St. Petersburg, Florida. Now, they've told us that they're very interested in this and actually led into talking about an equity investment in the company that will be matched by the Florida Institute of Commercialization. Now, Ditech wants to work with us because we can provide them a new competitive advantage, help them fortify and grow their market share, and diversify their product lines and intellectual property. We want to partner with them because they will likely be our first customer, and they help us give us a site to a real-world manufacturing facility that we can perform detailed case studies in. They did tell us that we cannot be a single source manufacturing company. We have to have another partner who manufactures this. So Jabil is a leader in contract manufacturing services who is investing heavily in advanced processes like our own. Now, Jabil, they've given us a letter of support. They're going to be our contract manufacturer. However, they also told us that they experience this problem on a daily basis because they install a lot of capacitors on a lot of different products. So they would like to provide us introductions to their customers in the automotive industry, healthcare industry, DoD, etc., after we have initial sales and strong case studies. So for the next 6 to 9 months, we're going to work with our partners, Sism Thin Films and Idea Engineering, Ditech, as well as Jabil, to design a mass manufacturing process for our cables. We will then go into a sales mode, going to trade shows, getting our UL listing, doing our first mass manufacturing run with Jabil, and eventually integrating with Ditech for our first bit of sales and revenue. However, I want to point out, around the middle of 2018, we're going to need an additional investment to fund the scaling efforts. So, 2017, we're going to be developing that mass manufacturing process with Jabil. We have to make sure that this is working first. But in 2018, we're going to do a paid pilot with Ditech. This isn't about getting strong revenue numbers in this year. It's about getting detailed case studies, which we will use to entice our next 5 customers in the next year. The first 5 customers will likely be a US-based power electronics manufacturing company that we will meet through trade shows and through connections of our advisors. But in 2020 is where we really scale up the revenue. We're going to partner with Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi is not an industry leader in power electronics, but they are definitely top 10, probably around 6 or 7. We're going to partner with them because it starts to change the way the industry looks on a large scale, forcing leaders such as Emerson and APC to either lose their placehold in the market or adopt our technology, which is how we'll scale the revenue. I also want to point out, in 2021, we will start to talk to Jabil about being introduced to new market verticals, and in 2022, we're going to explore licensing our technology to other capacitor leaders such as Maxwell capacitors. We believe we will be producing the capacitor for $4.20 and selling it for around $10. In 2018 with Ditech, just looking at their low volume product lines, we're looking to integrate to only 8% of their products to get us to our $100,000 revenue mark. But then we're going to scale to 5 medium-sized Ditech-like companies, which will get us to $750,000 in revenue, being integrated only into 15% of their products. Capacitech was founded by myself and Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas is a brilliant scientist, an amazing engineer, and he has the domain expertise that was extremely valuable in helping us secure those initial partnerships with Jabil. We also got a letter of support from Lockheed Martin and also Dytech. I am an electrical engineering student. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16 years old. I started my first company then, got a $10,000 fund to launch that and get it into revenue. But I realized when I was so young, I have to surround myself with experts in their field if we want to be even remotely successful. So we have surrounded ourselves with advisors and mentors, many more who don't even fit here, to keep us on a path to success. Lastly, last year we won this version of the competition at UCF, the UCF Joust, and that gave us about $75,000 of unused services. So we have donated accounting, legal, CFO, and marketing services that we will be using to fortify our launch over 2017 and 2018. Thank you, everyone, and I look forward to your questions.
So playing in this industry, you're going to be providing capacitors and circuit boards that go into Lockheed for missile systems, Siemens for telecom, laser systems, etc. How do you control the mil spec of these products? Because the tolerances are so tight, and I saw a big spool of cable. Who cuts that to the exact tolerance that allows you to have a capacitor that is within those mil specs? That's the first question. The second, I thought you said that there's already machines out there doing resistors and capacitors. I didn't understand that, because what's different about you then?
Okay, so the first question was about meeting those specific mil specs. Our first customer is Power Electronics for this building, for example. So they might be voltage regulation, they might be surge protection, anywhere from a consumer's home to a commercial building, all the way up to the DoD specs. Starting at DoD would be very risky, and if you knew me when I started this company, that was our plan, and it's just too much risk to go after DoD right away. So we're focusing on people lower down the totem pole, where the exact tolerance isn't necessarily so critical and specific. As for the machine, I'm sorry if I explained that incorrectly, but what I was saying is that there are machines that currently bend and prepare components like resistors and capacitors, not our resistor and capacitor, but standard capacitors, so that they can be installed on circuit boards. So the point of that was to make it clear that if we were to tell a customer, hey, we're going to sell you a spool of wire, here's a special machine that will draw our wire in, bend it, and cut it so it is at the right performance, the right capacitance, and that way you can install the capacitor that you need. They wouldn't think that's unheard of. That wouldn't be a shocking revelation to them, because they're already using machines to prepare their components.
So the end user would do the cutting?
Correct. That way you only have one device, one capacitor on your shelf, rather than 20 capacitors of very small quantities.
An unrelated question, you had said something about 4% equity? Yeah, what's that about?
So in order to license technology from a university, you typically have to give away an equity stake, because they helped fortify or put up some of the additional money. They provided the services to get the technology to where it is today. So the 4% equity is actually a win. Thanks, Bill Grimm, to wherever you are, for teaching me how to negotiate a part of venture scale up. But they actually started out with a 5% equity and a 10% royalty. And for something like an electronic component, a 10% royalty would have killed us. So I was fortunate to get it down to 2%. Yes.
If I can also answer that question, the difference here is this is a supercapacitor. So the capacitance is much higher than a typical capacitor. So that's the hairy structure you can see there. They are all nano whisker. We call them nano whiskers. And that can be easily developed, and that can enhance the surface area, total surface area, and that can multiply your capacitance. So it's a supercapacitor.
Yes.
How much of this has actually been manufactured so far?
So we have proven that the technology works, but think of it as like baking pasta. If you wanted to make pasta for a family of 4, but you only had a 2-inch pot, could you make that much pasta? Not really. We only had a 2-inch pot with the infrastructure that we had. However, we're contracting Sism Thin Films, Jabil, so that we can have access to larger infrastructure, a 6-inch pot, so that we can make pasta for a family of 4 rather than smaller units. So that we know that the technology works. It's about scaling the technology into a mass production process.
And what do you see as your biggest manufacturing challenge in achieving that scale?
I think what he was mentioning about making sure of the tolerance is important. So the way that this will work is you have the nano whiskers and then you coat the nano whiskers with chemicals. We have to make sure that the chemicals are consistent across the wire to make sure that the capacitance isn't a little more capacitive over here and a little less capacitive over there. We're actually working with Sism Thin Films, which has a special sputter coat method to help make that an even layer of the chemicals necessary.
Yeah, and that can be done easily by adjusting the time you give to deposit that layer on the surface of these nanostructures.
Correct.
Okay, and how many people are involved in the company today?
So right now, the equity holders are himself and me,
Okay.
Dr. Thomas and myself.
Yep.
But we're working with Ditech to try and get an equity investment, which will add them. We signed the intellectual property contract, so UCF now has 4% equity, and we are also going to be giving a matching equity fund for Florida Institute of Commercialization, which matches whatever the lead investor does.
And then how do you see, how many people do you think you're going to have in a year or 2 years?
What do you mean by people? Employees, customers?
Employees.
Employees. So I think right off the bat, we're going to need to bring on someone with a strong sales background and someone that has an MBA level operating background. So I would say between those 2 future employees to help with the business and sales side and the material science expert and the electrical engineer, I would say between 4 and 6 people over the next 2 years.
Okay. And then do you plan on the other folks that come in that 2-year group to be just employees, to be co-founders, to have options, equity? What's the plan to compensate them?
So yes, we have an option pool to help entice future employees, but that's pretty standard for any company. But I would consult with my advisors on how I would actually implement a plan like that. However, we've learned that Orlando is a beautiful place to work. Actually, George Grammatikis back there was just telling a story about how his employees can't get their relatives to go home. So being in a great location like Orlando, as well as having exciting technology that can be as disruptive like this, we haven't had actually a lot of difficulty getting people to want to work with us. As soon as I told Jabil about what we were doing, they were like, oh, I deal with that on a daily basis. They were intrigued. They wanted to be our partner. It wasn't just please be my partner.
And one last question. When you're talking about working with companies like Emerson and APC, are you talking about replacing the capacitor requirements in their power platforms or replacing some of the battery requirement as well?
So Emerson, APC, Mitsubishi, these are large system integrators for power electronics. So what they do is they buy capacitors or they buy a battery and they install it into a system. I would not be trying to redesign any of their products because that makes my barrier to entry much larger. I'm just simply going to give them a replacement capacitor for their electrolytic capacitor. So they don't need to redevelop their product or redo their UL listing or redo their patents. It's just about replacing the vendor of that capacitor.
So it's a direct capacitor replacement. It's not necessarily the density of like a potential battery replacement in its current form.
At the current form, no.
Thank you.
For the time being, it's not our plan, but in the future, that's a very possible thing because these wires, they can transmit electricity as well as it can store electricity. So in the future, that is a possibility. And also, it's not only supercapacitor, it can work as a hybrid battery. So it can work both as a supercapacitor, which can give a huge power, as well as the power density is high, as well as the energy density is high. Energy density high means it works like a battery.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we've spent some time in this space. Can you talk to me about the amount of testing done for that architecture related to a supercapacitor?
That would be referred to him.
Because the biggest issue that supercapacitors have is that when they're manufactured in unique ways, and you probably know the same 12 companies that I do. Yeah, well, everyone says that, but they fail, and they fail a lot. And I'm looking at the picture, and the architecture doesn't make me feel great about whether it fails or not. So can you talk to us about how much testing has been done relative to that architecture? And over time, varying power, power up, power down, cycles, that type of stuff that would make me feel better about a wire capacitor.
Yeah, this has been developed in my lab, and also we have developed at least more than 50 devices.
Okay.
And as he has shown, this has been selected as the cover page of a scientific journal, high-impact journal, and they always check all these things. So whether this is possible, even in Nature, there was an article that is the Bible for us, for scientists. So they tested all those things, and they approved that yes, this is a technology that works and it can be reproduced.
Right. If I can answer your question really quick, we've tested the cycles. It's 8,000 to 12,000 cycles were easily accomplished.
Yeah, and we checked for 12,000 cycles, but now we are checking it for 30,000 to 50,000 cycles.
Yeah, I mean, these things, the cycling, 8,000 cycles is like 0 cycles, right? I mean, the question is it getting to 100,000 cycles,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Right.
Well, I can also mention that we bent the capacitor over 1,000 times and it still had 99% efficiency.
Yeah, we did all those tests, bend it and cycle it, some of the current devices that can be cycled more than 30,000 cycles.
Yeah.
And with this high energy density as well as power density, as I said, this can be like a hybrid supercapacitor. Yeah. So that is very important. But if you think about your battery, you can cycle it only 2,000 to 3,000 cycles with your battery.
Right. But by the way, there's a lot less expensive, right? And the problems people have had is related to both the manufacturing rigidity and the ability to reproduce it really well. The fluid, so the coatings and stuff on the inside, because when those things don't, that looks really hard to coat. So that's why I'm asking.
Absolutely.
So
You're
you're pretty early.
Yes, you're absolutely right. What we have done is we have done the time-based one. So with the 10 minutes, this much thickness is going to be deposited on the nanostructures. 20 minutes, this much thickness is going to be deposited. And with that active material deposition, the thickness, your capacitance is going to vary. And we have done it a number of times and made sure that this works. And this is a technology for actual application.
So listening to this and just sort of understanding the process you've got to go through, you're years away from revenue. I appreciate Jabil Circuits. You're going to be a customer of Jabil Circuits. As long as you're going to pay them, they're going to do whatever you ask them to do. And Ditech, there's no reason for them not to want to have an interest in the company if you were going to be successful. If you're not successful, even if they invested some money, that's sort of the process. But it's sort of what Jason was. There's a lot going on here that I don't want to call it a science experiment, but there's a lot going. This is not a business yet, and you're reasonably far from it. I'm not trying to water down the presentation. You did an excellent presentation. It's probably the best one we've seen tonight. But it was a great sales job. I think this is a great idea, but it's not. And I don't want to say it's not in my lifetime for an investment. It's still a ways away.
Okay.
I know you don't agree, but I mean that's
your opinion.
right. I mean but that's sort of what it looks like.
Okay. Well, I would say that we're currently working with.
All right, and so Joe, no criticism of you, but you've got no corporate business experience. I mean, you're a good guy, went through school, and probably did a great job at it. But taking a product like this to market is not simple. Creating it is hard, I agree. But in a laboratory environment, you can create a lot of things. This is a tough deal what you have to do to go forward. I give you guys a lot of credit for wanting to go through it. But this is going to take a lot of investment to get it where you want it to be.
Okay.
Yeah, well, one, I was just going to say congrats. Sounds like you guys surround yourself with a good board. I mean, I would echo some of the sentiments here that my little piece of advice is, I don't know how active you're using some of the board members, but certainly the people who've invested in scaling businesses like this and really figuring out the go-to-market time. I was going to say what my colleague Richard said, but in a slightly more optimistic way. Right? I was going to say you would need somebody on your team that understands how to commercialize something like this faster than the time frame that you had it in there. Because I think the technology might actually work. I just feel as if, first of all, funny thing with a lot of these patents, they're like a couple ways to skin the cat. I'm sure it probably does work, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is the only way to build a supercapacitor with some of the flexibilities, right? So that's one, and then really think about what it would take to really take this business to the next level, and how do you reduce that time, because you don't want him sitting around here waiting 10 years before you're ready for him to invest.
Right, and as I mentioned to him, I do see adding more people to the team, and I mentioned a chief operating manager who would obviously need to have a background in commercializing technology like this. Those people do exist, and so I agree with both of you. It is a difficult market to do, and that is why we put a lot of value in having Dytech as our as our launching partner, because they could be the first customer as well. And so we plan on starting there, getting the case studies, and using that data to extrapolate to larger and bigger things.
So if I can add, the strength of our technology is a product. This is a first product which can transmit electricity and at the same time it can store the energy. That is the strength. That is unique. But in supercapacitors, you can see so many supercapacitors out there. But a technology like this, which can be used for solar in the future, solar energy, which is going to be transmitted to the grid. The cables can be used to transmit as well as it can store around it. Right. So that is.
Nighthawk is a designer and manufacturer of the innovative patent-pending safety and fitness product, Night Runner 270 shoe lights, that have been featured on ABC's Shark Tank, Good Morning America, and has been sold in over 40 countries around the world. Prior to founding Nighthawk, Doug spent over 30 years successfully driving business development and sales for a multi-billion dollar, Fortune 500 companies. Doug led the national sales team for the Home Depot Supply and was instrumental in developing new market strategies. From 1997 to 2007, he was Winter Park's very own vice mayor and city commissioner. Doug placed second in the 2015 Rollins Venture Plan competition. He is also a Fire Spring Fund graduate and a Rollins alumnus. Tonight, he will be interviewed by Dr. Pete McLinden, entrepreneur in residence at Rollins College Kramer Graduate School of Business. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Doug Storer.
Doug, welcome. I see you brought your fan club with you. That's great.
That's going to be hard to live up to, by the way. I know all of you here are here to see Pete, but
I don't think so. Not tonight. Not tonight. Doug, welcome. It's great to have you here. It's been a while since we caught up, so let's just get right into it.
Sure.
You always planned to be an entrepreneur, right?
Not at all. Not at all. I think entrepreneur is one of those things that you fall into when you don't really have a clear idea of what you want to do.
So how did it happen for you?
What's that?
How did becoming an entrepreneur happen for you?
Completely by accident, which is how the whole product was founded. I had an accident one morning when I was training for a marathon, and that led to the whole idea behind Night Runner.
And so you were out running late one night, and you tripped over something and hurt yourself and said, I should probably have a light of some kind.
Well, running's always been a passion, and I was training for my 5th marathon and got myself injured, and I had a lot of time to think about how I could keep that from happening. I knew that there was a need out there. I came home, my co-founder and wife, Renata, is here in the front row. I said, honey, I need headlights for my sneakers, and we kind of laughed about that. And then we started thinking about what might that look like? How would we do it? Let's go buy one. And we couldn't find one to buy, so we started thinking about how we would make one. And so that's really how it started, and that was 2013.
All right, so from the idea in 2013, how did you come up with the product that's in the market today? And for those of you that have not seen it, here's what the Night Runner shoe lights look like. They're very bright. They have many different modes, and they actually stay on your shoes when you run. So please walk us through that.
Well, the first thing was we had to convert our entire house into a laboratory. So we spent a lot of time experimenting on gee, what's the real problem here and how do we solve that? We actually duct taped little flashlights to our shoes, went out walking and running at night, said, okay, the concept of light down low works a lot better than having it by your eyes, right? Your eyes dilate when when light is close to it. So then we said, well, you can't just run around with a flashlight on your shoe. It's got to be smaller. It's got to be stable. So then the big problem became, how do you design the clip system that clips onto your shoes, minimizes the motion that is inherent in walking or running, and how do you get enough light and enough battery life? So the mantra became lighter, brighter, longer. And we worked through several prototypes. I called them prototypes. I mean, they're laughable now. In fact, when we were here 2 years ago, we had our very first prototype. It was not even a very good functioning prototype. It was V1 of V4. But we had something here to show people and to tell the story. But it took a while to get to that point through models that we made, through various Frankenstein kind of things that we took to show people, to show that it would work. And then when we got a little bit of funding, and this competition helped us a great deal in getting a little bit of money to go forward with actually hiring designers and engineers that knew what they were doing. We knew exactly what we wanted, but we needed to have it engineered and meet our specifications.
Very good. Tell us a little bit about the aha moments as an entrepreneur. When did you first realize that this is something that was viable, something that somebody else wanted, would pay you for it, and so on?
Yeah, I guess there might have been several aha moments. Certainly when the idea came to me, that might have been the first one. And every time we would take this idea to somebody, we would say, you know, we'll keep going until someone tells us it's a bad idea, you know. And we kept getting encouraged, you know. And one of those first meetings I had, as I took my embarrassing little prototype that I'd fashioned out of in our kitchen to John and Betsy Hughes at the Track Shack. And I said, you know, here's my idea. You know, I got this thing right here, and I showed it to him. I waved my arms a little bit, and you know, had a little bit more of a few pictures. But he says, you know what? That's a good idea. He says, I could sell those all day long. And well, that's all it took. So at that point, we were off and running. So then it became a matter of making the design parameters work. So I'll tell you one of the aha moments. If you hold up the product a minute, we had initially talked about you know, just both light units looking the same way. They were both exactly the same units. And I was walking around the house one day and with no shoes on, and I got to looking at my feet, and I'm like, you know, your feet aren't the same. They're left and they're right, and they're, you know, the toes are big in the middle and there's little ones on the end. I mean, it's they do different things. Why would you put lights on your feet that were both the same? And so that's where this idea came of this wing design, because it really mirrored the shape of your foot. And then we started looking at this wing design, and we said, what are we going to do with the tip of the wing? And that's where this back-facing red light came. So it really went from just seeing forward to being able to see both peripheral light to the side and a red-facing backlight, which really was the key to making the safety of the product go exponentially up.
So you're at the Track Shack. You have some market acceptance at some level. You have a prototype that's now symmetrical and kind of matches one's feet. What steps did you take next to finally make it a product?
Well, I tell you, that's where Rollins came on board, and the entrepreneur system that we have here in Orlando, none of which I knew about, by the way. I mean, we were, my wife and I were both professionals. We were working full-time jobs. We were in corporate America, nothing related to shoe lights. But few people were related to shoe lights, right? So we started asking questions because we found that, and I've since learned that there's really three things to any entrepreneur. It's urgency, It is getting the information that you need when you need it, and its resources. That really is the three things. And so we realized that we had to find out information very quickly to get to the next step. And we searched everywhere we could to find that. Rollins was a great resource. Dr. Bill Grimm, hey, howdy, Bill, had a community class that fortunately worked into my work schedule, so I could go visit with other entrepreneurs and listen to, someone who actually knew what they were doing, talk about some of these things. And then there's other pitch events like this pitch event where you get to talk to other people, other entrepreneurs, other investors, and people, little by little, we gathered pieces of information. The important part of that was, with all deference to Bill, I didn't need to know how to seed my board at that point. I needed to know that next step, that next minor little step. And so that's when you need the information, you need it quickly. And so we were out there finding that. Fortunately, it was available, and we're still looking for the next step of information.
Okay. Very good. So the ecosystem, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you got plugged into it at the time that you did. In terms of building the product and taking it to manufacturing, walk us through a little bit about through that process.
Yeah, it was, it's never a straight line. In fact, our first, I love going back and looking at kind of our old plans and old pitches. From concept to manufacturing, I think we initially looked at about 6 months. We were going to knock this thing out, right? Then we realized the hurdles that were involved in actually building something physical. Building a product is much different than a piece of software. You've got more challenges. You have to actually go tool it and build it and then sell it. And so we had those challenges, but I talked a little bit about the performance specifications, and that's the one thing that both my wife Renata and I were very particular on. We knew the specifications that we needed. We started working with our first initial engineer. It looked beautiful. It was an absolute work of art. It didn't work more than 20 minutes. The battery life was not there. The lumens were not there. It looked good, but it didn't function. So, but that got us to the next step, right? So that got us to an investor to say, look, we made something. It works, right? It's going to work better. So we actually went through 2 other iterations of engineers before we actually got the design parameters right to where it was a functioning product, to where we've been able to sell 30,000 of these in 18 months. That took about a little over 2 years to get to that point.
All right, excellent. So 30,000 in 2 years. Congratulations, that's great. You had some opportunities there on TV with some particular shows we'll talk about in a second, but talk to us about how a product then became something you could sell to the world, not just locally, but elsewhere.
Yeah, and I have to, that was a little bit of a surprise to us because we were initially, we thought this was great. We were going to make something that the world needed. Hadn't given a lot of thought to, how we were going to sell this, the business behind it. That was a whole other awakening. But what we did do is about 2 years ago, in fact, right before we were competing in the venture plan competition, we went on Kickstarter with our first product. And I'll tell you about this in just a minute. The reason that we did that was we wanted to gain more customers. We wanted to prove the concept. Of course, we needed the money, but it was more important to see if somebody would buy this. And so we had prototype sexy pictures. We had done a video that very clearly explained how the product worked. Went a long way into really capturing someone's imagination about the product, and did some good branding, and then went to Kickstarter. And in 30 days, we were able to not only raise $43,000, but we got 762 customers before we made anything. So to us, that was just validation, first of all. We also realized that they weren't just from the United States. They were from 25 other countries. That was an eye-opener. I guess it gets dark everywhere, right? So we should have figured that out. Come full circle to 2 years from now, we have one product. We have one product, Night Runner 270, which is on the market now. This year, we have two products, Night Runner Pro and Night Shift Pro, that will be coming out by the end of the year. We're actually in a Kickstarter campaign right now. I want all of you to go look at Kickstarter for Night Runner Pro, and you can see all about the new product. But that goes until April 21st. And then in 2018, we have another product called the Safe Shift, which will be a safety software that enhances worker safety by alerting them to biohazard conditions, all types of safety conditions they may encounter in the workplace or industrial markets.
Yeah, very good. You forgot to ask for the order. So go to Kickstarter.com, take a look at the new products, and buy one. And then get back to Doug with your feedback.
No, thank you.
So a lot of folks are interested in the Kickstarter campaign, the mechanics of it, maintaining it, being successful with it, because you start a campaign, you did not have 760 some folks that were willing and able to buy. Walk us through from kind of beginning to end what the experiences was like, and would you do it again?
Well, and we did in fact do it again, so yes, the answer is yes. But it was like anything, you have to be able to clearly articulate your product, your business plan, and before people actually lay money down for something, these are not things they can take home right away or get in 2 weeks. They wait 6 months for these things. So to do that, you have to articulate that yes, you can deliver, and that you have a plan to deliver this product, and they can believe in that. And they also have to be intrigued by the product. And I wish I could say, Renata and I were, so smart to do all this, but people like the product. So, I mean, that's it. You have to have a product that people like and need. And Kickstarter gave us that push. It also gave us visibility. I tell people, and you're getting old when you're telling your story over and over again, but you got to get off the couch. You got to get out there and do something. And Kickstarter gave us another platform to tell the story, to show people. And interesting thing happened, as one of those 762 customers happened to be best friends with the producer of the CBS show Innovation Nation. And out of the blue, we get this call from this show, and they want to do an interview and feature the product. And so after we launched, we were on CBS with Mo Rocca on Innovation Nation, which is a great show, Emmy Award winning. And all of a sudden, we had all these other people who knew about Night Runner, and sales just spiked along with our launch sales. So we were very fortunate.
And actually, Mo did a follow-up for you too, not too many weeks ago.
He did, yes, yeah. We actually got to go out to Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show and meet with all the Innovation Nation people, and they were it's almost like we're in a family. So it was very nice.
Yeah, and actually, not that you would do it again. Clearly, you would, but. Doing that first Kickstarter campaign, what would you have done differently? Was it worth your time? Was the timing right for the organization? Clearly it was, but what things would you have changed now with 2020 hindsight?
Yeah, we're correcting the things that we would have changed in this campaign, actually, but the timing was good. But I think the key message is overcoming the fear of failure, because when you do something like this with something new, you're out there. I mean, it could have come back as, you didn't reach your funding goal. People said, I don't want this. I don't need this. So we were prepared that, gosh, people might not like it, But these are not passive things. Along with anything, you have to work it. I mean, we spent money on a professional video. We had a public relations firm that was reaching out to publications. Renata was featured in Runner's World during that campaign about called the Mothering a New Invention. And so, I mean, you had to do well-placed PR and push it. And little by little, it grew and grew. And the grassroots of the running community have been great because they all talk to each other. And once you see these out on the road, if you've ever seen them out on the road, you say, gosh, what is that? I want that. So a lot of our businesses come from that.
Yes, so sort of word of mouth and certainly highly visible kind of thing at night.
Yeah, we call it word of feet.
Word of feet, okay. I like it better. So all of this kind of brought you to a point where you were on Shark Tank. Tell us a little bit about how that happened, what that experience was like.
So Shark Tank. So we had just launched the product in October of 2016. 15, excuse me. And we'd been on Innovation Nation. We'd done some trade shows. We were starting to gain a lot of traction. And then something a little strange happened. It started to get light outside and longer days and not enough dark. So sales slowed a little bit, and a little bit of anticipation. So we what are we going to do next, So we kind of scratched our heads. And I had read about an open audition in Miami for Shark Tank. And our conversations over in the kitchen always start like this. Is this a little crazy? What do you think? And we started batting it about. We said, what do we got to lose? Let's give it a try, And so we drove down to Miami at 3 a.m. It's like one of those open casting calls you see on American Idol where they're like all around the block, there's lines of people. So here we were with all these crazy people in line. And it literally took maybe 6 or 7 hours getting all the way through this process. But we met with these evaluators, and it seemed to be pretty well received. We later found out the numbers on the Shark Tank. So in each season, 50,000 companies apply to Shark Tank. It takes about 8 weeks to go through the process, which involves paperwork, due diligence, videos that you have to submit so they know that you can walk and talk and, not wither on a camera. And they tell you that they're going to, 200 companies out of that 50,000 get flown to LA to film. But even then, they say, just because you got this far doesn't mean you're going to be on Shark Tank, right? So, actually, 161 companies out of the 50,000 make it on the show, and if you've ever watched the show, about half of them get deals. So we were very, very fortunate to be, in that half that got a deal.
Yeah. So you took the money and you grew the company. Tell us what happened.
Sure. So the good news is that when we applied for Shark Tank, and by the time that we were on it, we had overcome a few hurdles. Right? We got those initial customers. We had a working prototype. We started to gain some traction with even more customers. We started to get that thing called revenue, which was that's always fun. So those are all the kind of things they like in the Shark Tank. So and we had a patent protection, or we have a patent pending, so that was something that they always ask about. So we said, we've checked a few boxes, maybe it's time. So we were at a level of maturity that we thought that it might be appropriate. So when we went on the show, we had done a lot of background work, and I'll tell you that we drilled questions about our company. We developed a 64-page or 64 questions about our company, all of our business metrics, and we drilled them over and over and over again. So there was nothing those sharks could have asked us about our own company that we didn't know. And if you watch the show, that's where a lot of the trouble starts, is when you don't know your numbers, when you hesitate on something. So we were well prepared for that. When we got into the tank, we were fortunate that at least one of the, and we find out several, were runners and were interested in the product. And so it started off with Robert Hershovic, who we knew was a runner, and actually we had targeted, showed some interest in the product. But he came in at a very crazy high valuation. I think he wanted 30 a low valuation. He wanted 30% of the company for what we were asking. And so we Fortunately, somebody else jumped in and started talking about it. The very flattering thing to us was that we actually got over 8 offers from 4 of the sharks, and they all liked it for different reasons. Mark Cuban was very interested in the Bluetooth connected version, which this new unit we're doing on Kickstarter is Bluetooth connected. Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, loved the industrial safety product that we were developing. I mean, he saw the numbers. I was impressed with that because that was validation to us that that market was there because of his interest. Lori Greiner loved the marketability, the packaging, how it looked, said the product was a winner, and she's like the queen of retail. And of course, Robert Hershovic was a runner, and we knew that he would like. We thought he might like it. So the nice thing about it is we started a bidding war. So we actually were fortunate enough to kind of step back a little bit and let these guys kind of fight it out. So that was a little amusing to us, and we were actually a little taken aback by that. But it ended up that 4 of them were interested and one that wanted it. And we ended up taking an offer from Robert Hershovic, $250,000 for 15% with a $100,000 loan. And that's exactly what we wanted when we walked in, and exactly the shark we wanted to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is the money in the bank?
The money is not in the bank. So
tell us what happened.
Yeah, so kind of the behind the scenes of Shark Tank. So the show filmed June 28th. We were on October 7th, so a lot of time had passed. During that time, what they do after you make a handshake deal in the Shark Tank is they go through their due diligence. You start to talk with their team, and there's a lot of exchange of information. So we actually fielded 2 additional offers from Robert after the Shark Tank, both of which were lower than what was in the Shark Tank. But what had happened in the meantime is we aired. From the time that we aired in that month, we did 10 times our annual revenue in that 130-day period.
Congratulations.
So we're sitting here going, I don't know that we need to take a haircut here, plus why would we give away equity when we've got the revenue we need now and we earned it through the marketplace. And so we held tight to our deal that we made in the Shark Tank, and we ended up parting ways on that. But there's 2 parts to the Shark Tank. There's the incredible exposure that you get from Shark Tank, and then there's also what the shark can do to help you. And I have to recognize Daryl Lynn's in the audience. She is a Shark Tank alumni and a Rollins alumni, so way to go.
Yeah. Very good. So as far as the experience, because obviously the show is edited heavily, when you fly out to LA and you're behind the scenes, do you get to meet the sharks beforehand? Do they put you in a green room? Do you rehearse, practice? Do you get to do any of that? Or do they just throw you into the tank and put the bright lights on you to see how well you can swim?
Well, they have some of it I can talk about. Some of it I had to sign papers that we could never talk about. But the long and the short of it is that they prepare you very, very well. The sharks know nothing about you when you walk in the door. So they haven't seen you. They don't know anything about your product. The TV show vets you and takes you through this long selection process. But when you walk in, you have to, in 2 minutes, capture their attention. If they don't like you, you're out of there in 15 minutes. If they like you, they'll keep you in there for over an hour. And just hammer you with questions. And so we were in there for over an hour. So that was quite an experience in itself.
I see. So you had the halo effect occurred, right? Probably with Mo Rocca and Shark Tank, and there was another one, Good Morning America?
Good Morning America,
Talk to us a little bit about that one.
So after Shark Tank, there was that sitting around the kitchen counter kind of thing going, what are we going to do now, And we had talked with some fellow entrepreneurs that had consumer products that had been involved with Good Morning America, Deals and Steals. I don't know if you've ever seen that segment. So we said, why not? We know the contact name. I'll shoot them an email. We'll see if if there's any interest there. So that morning I shot them an email. We heard from them that afternoon. And strangely enough, they were putting together a segment on just Shark Tank products. And they go, "You'd be perfect. Can you have 10,000 units in 3 weeks?" And of course, what's the answer to that? Sure.
Of course, we have about 10 in inventory right now. Yes.
So we aired in Good Morning America on February. In one day, we sold just about 9,000 units. So it was a good month.
So let's see, Shark Tank, well, Mo Rocca, Shark Tank, Good Morning America, Oprah.
Don't laugh.
I know that's probably next, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. So I wish I could say we were so smart and planned all these things to happen, but the good news is we have a product that shows well. It's very demonstrable, and especially when the lights are on, and so it films well. So this has been proven out with a couple of shows, and so yeah, we're going to try to find those opportunities. For any type of exposure like that, I mean, Shark Tank I think has 8 million viewers. Any type of exposure like that for a consumer product, it's gold. I mean, we don't have a budget like that for mass marketing, top of the funnel brand recognition like that. So how else are you going to get it? You have to scrap and claw and find these types of opportunities. And there's some more of them out there, and you bet we're going after them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's exciting to me that you have these opportunities, that you have word afoot out there. You have something that at night people can see very readily. Where do you take it from here?
Well, it's interesting because, and again, tying it back, I'm having a lot of memories of our preparing for the first Rollins Venture Plan competition. And as we were going through kind of the first part of the process, they said, "This is a great looking product. You got a pretty neat business plan, but you only have one product. You can't have a company with one product. You're not a business, you're a product." And so we took that to heart and we started challenging ourselves, well, what else could we do with this? And that's when we started working on the next models. When we got accepted into the Firespring Fund Accelerator, very hard to say, and that was we just graduated from that in February. And the fortunate part of that is they challenged us on the technology side of things to push our products, and so we were able to really push our whole line to figure out who we were. And it turns out we weren't a shoe light company at all. We were an innovative safety company, and so that allowed us to go into the software side of things and look at the Bluetooth connected model for our next products. Now we have 4 products, and we're looking at other types of avenues to expand in that. So
yeah, very good. Talk to us about how you leverage the ecosystem now for all of the budding entrepreneurs that we have here tonight. What things, because I like what you said about just give me the next step. Don't paint the full vision because I can't even wrap my head around that. Talk to us about the steps that you had taken, why they were meaningful, and what they were.
Yeah, well, it really comes about, and one could say I was fortunate, others could say I just was out there hustling, but you have to look at your network and your people that you know and talk to them and tell them about what you're doing. They know people. You really have to navigate your network. And when I went on this accelerated journey to get knowledge, I knew the time clock was ticking before this died. I was on a mission to get the information that I needed. Well, everybody that I met that was in this area said, "Well, oh, you need to talk to this person. This person knows this," and I'd have coffee with them, and that person would know 2 other people, and you'd keep navigating through this network. And so the nice thing about the ecosystem, and it's gotten much better, believe me, in 2013, there weren't a lot of opportunities. I mentioned Dr. Grimm's class, which was great for working people. Again, we were doing full-time jobs while we were developing this product. But things like Starter Studio, we couldn't apply to because we had full-time jobs. clubs. So there were after-hour things that we would go to, the lunchtime events, things like that. Anytime they would have a founders talk. Anytime that we could hear somebody talk about their journey, we would go listen to, and we would learn things from them. Nobody's journey is the same. My journey is much different than anybody else is going to be. But you would learn little bits and pieces, and we started figuring things out. And the nice thing about getting in these networks like Starter Studio and Rollins and Firespring Fund is you start to develop mentors, both formal and informal. I would classify you as a mentor. I've had many coffees with Pete. And if you can accelerate getting to the right person by even a day, that could be critical to your survival. And so that's exactly what we did. We were able to get to people that, can help and were more than willing to help. And by the way, once you've gone through this journey, you would I would drop anything to help someone right now, just because I got that help when we were going through it. So,
very good. Very well said. We have just a few more minutes, and I want to bring Renata into this mix. How important has the relationship been in building a business, in everything that you've been through? Talk to me about the dynamics. Renata, please, come on up.
Thank you for dragging me into this, by the way. So we came up with the idea before we got married. We were already planning a marriage, but it hadn't happened yet. So the idea came, and we became all consumed, as Doug had already explained. So we got married, and our honeymoon was actually at a independent running retailer trade show. So we enjoyed it, but yeah, that's true commitment. And that was our last vacation until just a few weeks ago, when we had a chance to go skiing finally. So, but the teamwork, we work well together. We complement each other very well. We bounce ideas off of each other, and we're always there. So it's not, we don't come from different offices or different places. So it's very, very collaborative, what we do. And it's actually made our relationship stronger, I think.
it's also taken over half of our house too. So and I'll tell you, if you don't have a partner that is on board, that could have killed the idea right in the beginning. Whether it's your spouse, whether it's the people around you, if a negative word or conversation could have killed the whole idea. Renata was on board from the beginning, and her imagination was, both of our imaginations were sparked, and obsessed is the only word that I can come up with when we started off on this. So.
Thank you, Doug.
Please stay up here for just 1 second. We're wrapping it up. So the company as it stands today, both of you are full-time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
No, we have a lot of outsourcing, and we have purposely kept it very lean, but we have customer service outsourced, we have our manufacturing and logistics outsourced, our public relations and marketing. So we're this year we will bring on a chief of marketing and a vice president of sales. That'll be our next 2 hires.
Oh, very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, one last plug, Kickstarter campaign.
Ends April 21st, so
ends
take
April
a look
21st.
at it.
And please help me thank Doug and Renata for being here with us tonight. Renata, thank you so much. All right, the judges are almost done deliberating.
First of all, if we could give one final round of applause for all of our contestants. All right, we're going to announce the placeholders first, and we'll start with 4th place. And our 4th place winner is Capacitech. Do that. Our third place winner is Thor Ore. All right, we have two teams left, Hino and Fleet Zoo. Our second place winner is Hino. And that means the winner of the 2017 Rollins Venture Plan competition is Fleet Zoo.